What's up, guys? So for today's video, I want to talk about a specific archetype of characters where I just heavily dislike their character design, and that is characters where their main weakness is their recovery, and everything else is really strong with the poor recovery as a compensation. So I'm talking about characters like Min Min, Kazuha, Aegis, From, Ike, Little Mac, supposedly Cloud, pretty much every FGC character. I'm not gonna list them all. These characters where it's like, hey, this character is really good, so we're gonna make one specific aspect of the gameplay like the way to beat them, pretty much it on a surface level. And there's a few reasons I don't like it. What's up, guys? If you sign up to my newly relaunched Patreon right now, you get full access to my 2023 tier list. You get all my videos a week early. You get exclusive Patreon content. You get to vote on future video topics and more. We're gonna really try this time to make the Patreon worth it for you guys to check out, and it's gonna be great. So one, just from like a balance perspective, I think it's really hard to balance those type of characters. Like, sure, you do have some characters who are really solid overall but have poor recoveries, and that keeps them around like lower high tier, upper mid tier, like From, Young Link. But I feel like that's a rarity, because more often than not you get characters like Aegis, Cloud, Kazuha, where it's like they're so overtuned everywhere else that even if the recovery is really poor, you have to be able to beat the overtune aspects of their neutral, of their combo game, of their advantage, whatever it is, to even exploit the poor recovery. Or in the inverse, you have characters like Little Mac or DK, where they're not overtuned enough, and as a result, like, they're just really bad characters because they're not overtuned enough. You put them at disadvantage, and then they're just dead off stage, destroyed. So not only is that just like hard to balance, it also, when it comes to like different levels of play, top level players are really good at exploiting recoveries, where you have to be. You have to be able to throw DK off stage and kill him. Young Link off stage has to die. Cloud off stage should be getting killed, but it's hard to kill him, so he just is broken. But anyway, like, you need to be able to take those stocks. But in Ultimate, it's hard to edgeguard. It's a very skill testing thing, which is great. But as a result, when you're at lower levels of play, like you're not a particularly great player, trying to edgeguard these characters, execution isn't there, these characters end up feeling insane. Like, if you're fighting a DK and you can't kill him, you can't get the edgeguard on his up B, he's living to whatever percent and rage killing you super early and out trading you and everything, it stinks. Or you're fighting like an Aegis, you know, they're off stage, they live. Their overwhelming neutral is just like, it's so disgusting. Granted, of course, you know, those lower levels, the players playing those characters are going to mess up too, and more mistakes, and yada yada yada, balances out somewhat. It feels like that, more than a lot of other things, really changes the meta when you get into different skill brackets. So that's one reason I don't like them. Another reason is that it's just really obnoxious to fight characters when their like kit is super overtuned. And this is definitely like a more like personal thing. You know, I'm not gonna say like I'm objectively right here, because I'm definitely not objectively right. But man, you know, fighting an Aegis, no, oh, they just outclassed me neutral in every way. When I throw them off stage, they die. It's like, it's really just obnoxious, right? To fight a character where the strength is they just win neutral. Another reason I have, and I think this is kind of my biggest reason, this is definitely an Ultimate problem, I say, more than a general game design problem, is that there's a lot of characters in Ultimate where they're not really meant to go off stage and edgeguard. And I don't think there's like a specific niche of characters where it's like they're not meant to go off stage and edgeguard. You know, it just depends on the character. But what's very annoying about that is because there's such a diversity in the ability of characters to edgeguard, right? Look at a character like Rosa, whose edgeguarding is amazing, or Pokemon Trainer. And then you compare it to a character like Roy, whose edgeguarding is just like, you're not supposed to go off stage. Or you look at a character like Terry, who's not great at edgeguarding. And it's like, it creates these matchups that I feel like get really lopsided, where it's like, oh, you know, you're supposed to exploit the poor recovery, but your character's edgeguarding is equally as poor, so you can't exploit the poor recovery, and therefore there isn't like a particularly big relevant weakness for these characters. Like, you know, I can always go into the minuscule things like, you know, you just Mytho does low damage on hits, Pyro has a little bit of trouble killing, or, you know, Ken, he has low range. Like, sure, there's other weaknesses, but when it isn't universal to be able to exploit like the main weakness in a character design, it creates really lopsided matchups, or matchups where it feels like there's just something missing, right? You look at, for example, Roy versus Aegis. Aegis wins that matchup pretty hard, and that's because Roy can't take advantage of her main weakness. So in that matchup, Aegis is a power kept Roy, and when I watch it, I'm just like, it's really dumb. Or in the inverse, you know, you get a character with a great edgeguarding game, like let's say Min Min versus Aegis, and it's like, that matchup was really dumb, But it's very dumb because Min Min throws Aegis off stage, and if the Min Min player is playing it right, she should be dying most of the time. And like, they're both really dumb in different ways because the matchup comes down to like that aspect of the game. And you know, obviously when you get to more depth and nuance, all the parts of the game do matter. But it really feels like it boils it down and simplifies it too much. And you know, maybe I can make a video about the inverse, about like characters with really good recoveries, but to think about like how I feel about that. I also dislike that it feels like just lazy design, where it's like, we want to give this character all these tools, so we're just gonna give him that recovery weakness. And like, sometimes it feels just like, yeah, they got lazy, they don't know what to do. It feels like slapped on for a lot of characters, I'll say. Oh, I remember the other thing that was bothering me, and that is when you have a character whose recovery is supposed to be really weak, but actually isn't as weak as the developers intended, then you just get a character that's just really stupid, right? I'm looking at a character like Cloud, where they actually buffed his recovery in one of the patches, and now the character is just like, he's insane, right? Because his recovery, sure, it's one of the weaker ones, but with his amazing airspeed and limit and the recovery buff, it's not like bad. It's like below average to average, and like, he just feels like a really dumb character to fight because his main weakness isn't that exploitable when you're fighting regular players. Or Kazuya, right? You know, his weakness is supposed to be his recovery, but he has some mix-ups. His up B and his up jump were very high, and he's just not really that edge guardable. Unless, like, you outplay it and just, like, edge guard very well. And then he's just a really dumb character. Granted, he's not, like, the best character in the game or anything. But he's really dumb and polarizing because he was better in that area than intended. And you can make the argument for everything when a character ends up being over or under tuned compared to what the devs expected. It creates stupid situations in some way. But it's just really noticeable in that specific aspect, in my opinion. It's not like it's game ruining or anything, you know, I understand it. I'm not going, oh my god, Aegis is the worst designed character in the game. But I think for the next Smash game, I think it would be better off if recovery strengths were a little bit more normalized. Like, instead of having this crazy scale, you have a slightly smaller scale. And at the same time, you made it so characters about Edgeguard is normalized, where it's like you don't have like the difference of like PT versus like Roy, you know, instead of like here, it's like here. And I think it just makes a more interesting game. That's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Peace.